Hello, hello. This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barn. Today, we're going to be talking about the Babylon Bee. It's their 2-year anniversary of when Twitter, that was, formerly outside of the hands of Elon Musk, when they went ahead and decided to push them out from their platform, and how they decided to hold their ground, and how it resulted in Elon buying Twitter and all kinds of different stuff. So we're going to talk about the importance of, I guess, picking your hill to die on, because it really was a monumental moment for them, and they couldn't have known how big it was going to be, but it was important for them to stand their ground. And they posted some communications between them that I thought was kind of interesting. Uh, by the way, thank you to those who are watching, those who are tuning in later. Can you hear me all right? Because my headphones aren't really, I can hear myself talking, but not so much through the headphones, but it should be coming through loud and clear. So I just want to make sure you guys can hear me and I'm not on mute to you guys. So you guys can let me know in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys, if you would like to support, you guys can send super chats. For watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars, or you guys can go directly to blacktnews.com because it does cost a stream and run my website, all the stuff. So you guys can support. Appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch also that's available on the store as well. Like this Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt. Audio good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for letting me know. One thing about this Joe Biden shirt, because there's a list of some of his racist stuff on the back. I posted a video this morning on TikTok, but I also posted this afternoon on YouTube. And so this girl came at me. Her name is like Satan Smokes, and I think was like bleep you, such user such and such. So charming gal. First started coming in my comments over some comments about transgenderism and stuff, but also said things like, "Oh, you're a black woman who's supporting Trump. That's so embarrassing." And I click on her profile picture. This chick is as white as the driven snow, and I'm just kind of like, one, nobody has like a booklet on how black people are supposed to behave, or if there is such a booklet, I wouldn't care about it one way or another. But sometimes I'm just like, the audacity of these white people to just say such things. And so I did a video because she had said something about, "I'd respect you more if you just admitted you're a transphobe or something." So my video reply was, I don't need your respect. I don't care about your respect, and I didn't ask for it, and it wouldn't hold much value. And I said other things as well. But she's continuing to say things in my comments, and when she tried to explain why it's embarrassing for a black woman to vote for Donald Trump, she said, well, she keeps bringing up instances of racism. And so some of the things are, if you Google Donald Trump racism, there's like a list that pops up from like a site. And I think there's a wiki page of people posting things in there. And so I'm aware of like the list. And some of the things that people say aren't racist, or there's things out of context, or there's things that are hearsay. And so like one of the examples is like, "Oh, well, he said, the whole birther thing with Obama." And I'm like, well, that was started by the Hillary Clinton folks. And if you question someone's citizenship, or that makes you automatically racist. I mean, people question McCain's authenticity of whether he could run for office, and because I think he was born on a base out of the country and stuff. So people ask those questions. It doesn't mean you're a racist or whatever, or that particular action in itself is racist. So people list different things like that. So to be frank, I guess in the past I've thought about like going through all those things and kind of debunking this or explaining that and stuff. I, Donald, maybe there's need of it one day, but he's Trump can be so frustrating sometimes. I'm like, I don't know if I have the energy for all that. So to go through and debunk every little comment that she's making, I don't, as of right now anyway. But I'm like, okay, if it's embarrassing to vote for Trump, let's just go with the premise that he is a big raging racist. It, 2024 is looking like a choice between Trump and Biden, right? And in 2020, the choice was between Trump and Biden. So, for the sake of argument, we're saying that Trump is a racist. Are all the black women who voted for Joe Biden, are they an embarrassment too? Because that white man has said some pretty terrible things that were absolutely racist. And if we're going to talk about who's had a more negative impact on the black community, it's Joe Biden, hands down. Like, no debate. You'd have to be a crazy person. As a matter of fact, the reason why Kamala Harris, and I've said this many times, and it's true, or one of the many reasons why she is vice president is because Joe Biden, because at first he just wanted a woman. He didn't say woman of color. He wanted a woman. So he's playing that card of the woman card, right? And so he said he's going to do that. But then there was a group letter that Charlemagne and other black people got together and wrote and said, you have to pick a black woman if you want us to support you. And then it, basically became a race between like which black woman was he going to choose. And then he picked Kamala Harris. But there was a "You ain't black" comment that's pretty iconic. And that's one of the things that's on the shirt that I sell, blacktnews.com. There's also the comment when he was talking to Hispanic voters. And he said, unlike the African American community, the Hispanic community has incredibly diverse thoughts about different things. That is really offensive. That's really offensive. Like, so you're saying black people, unlike the Hispanic people, they have diverse thoughts on stuff, but not the blacks. The blacks are uniform, right? So, and you could say, well, they all vote pretty much the same in a block. That's not what he said. If he could, it's pretty much undebatable that the black vote is, 80 more than 80% going one particular way. But why is our name in your mouth when you're having a conversation about somebody else? Why'd you have to dog us to the Latinos? Why? Why even do that? And so if you think it's embarrassing that black people would vote for Trump, you have to think it's embarrassing for black people to have voted for Biden. Now, there are reasons that expand their personal decisions or rhetoric of why people would vote for them, and this person still hasn't asked what those reasons are. But I mean, one thing that's pretty obvious, you guys know me, I don't like abortion. I think abortion is one of the most immoral things, especially for our country, with us killing about 1 million babies a year. I the tearing the limbs off the babies, dismembering them with the suction, starving them, denying them of the nutrients and blood for the oxygen and stuff that they need for all these elective reasons. Oh, I couldn't afford it. Oh, I wanted a blank slate. Oh, it's not really a person because they're just too vulnerable and underdeveloped for me to care. I so many different reasons that I've heard explanations, but it's never usually to preserve their life. It's more about their lifestyle. I think that's way more immoral than the "You ain't black" comment or Donald Trump questioning whether or not Obama was born in America. Way more immoral. And Trump, and if you've been following me for a while, you know that I was very frustrated and annoyed with comments that he made regarding the pro-life movement and community. And to be frank, I wasn't planning on supporting him in a primary because he's seems to want to really kind of moderate with this particular position more than I was comfortable with. So, but it didn't really matter. The primary was basically over after Iowa. But pick still between Joe and Trump. Joe Biden makes me feel like the most important thing that he thinks is a priority for me as a woman, as a black woman, isn't educating, having the freedom to educate my children how I see is appropriate. It isn't their safety. It's me having the ability to kill them while they're in the womb. That's how Joe Biden makes me feel, like that is his priority. Like that's the most important thing to him. And that's what he prioritizes during a State of the Union and different addresses. And they'll say things like, oh, women of color need abortion. We're already disproportionately killing our babies. And that's what's on your mind. Like, I know that he still wants to give out money here or there for, to buy votes and stuff. But that's a top priority for him. That's a top priority for him. And they want to enshrine basically elective abortion on viable, healthy babies. That's a Democrat Party position. They don't want to be direct on what they actually feel. Joe Biden skirts the issue. They'll say, well, you just want to codify Roe. Do you know what Roe v. Wade did? I do. So I know you're full of garbage. So that's one of the many reasons. One of the many reasons that, I mean, I've mentioned lately that the border situation is so bad, despite how you might personally feel about Trump. It's well worth it for Biden not to be president right now. And then he's just like a feckless, weak leader on the world stage, and we can't have that right now. Biden he's a dangerous man to get another 4 years, I think. But I have my reasons. And black women who are going to support Joe Biden, they have their reasons, and we can disagree on those reasons. But for people to just be like, oh, it's just an embarrassment because you did. Why don't you actually find out why people vote the way that they vote and have conversations? Because you'll be surprised sometimes of why people make the decisions that they make. Now, sometimes those reasons are kind of based in delusion, but have the conversation. But anyway, if you think Trump is, if the choice is Trump and Biden, and you think Trump is the one who's the racist, you just haven't paid enough attention. You just haven't paid enough attention. So anyway, let's jump to business. I did edit the review for the American Society of Magical Negroes. I will have that out tonight, later this evening. So I know some people are interested in seeing that review. My review is, I don't know if anyone is like waiting for me to just kind of like rip it to shreds, but my take is kind of far more nuanced than I think most people that you will see on the right who watched it. I think people on the right who probably went to go watch it, went to go hate watch it. I was actually kind of interested in the narrative and how they're going to be able to pull it off and stuff. So you'll be able to see that tonight for sure. Here's my not so magical Negro book, though. I just want to point that out. Charlotte is not actually magical, but she does have superpowers. So I just wanted to put it out there. You guys know that I write books, but this one was on hand to grab to show you guys. But The Color of God's Eyes, think like the American Civil War meets X-Men. So you guys can check that out on Amazon. Is easy to search and find. I don't think there's any other books with that title. And of course, you can see my name. Pick up that book, read it. It's a good book. Anyway. My sister's like, not the a magical Negro book. Yes, the not so magical Negro. They are not magic, but they do have powers. So let's talk about the Babylon Bee, because they do have an interesting anniversary. Dan Dillon retweeted here some comments from 2 years ago. Today we decline to censor ourselves. So Seth Dillon posted a conversation they had about when their stuff was censored. So if you're unaware of what they had censored, it was this right here. The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levin. So Rachel Levin is our assistant health secretary. And if we were just going to judge books by their covers, would that be like your top choice for assistant health secretary? I would say no. But that's who it is. Now, beyond appearance and so on, uh, to have Levin be the person at that job, knowing that he botched COVID in his state and got caught, like there's states that were mixing like COVID patients in nursing homes, causing many deaths to happen. Uh, Levin knew that was a bad idea and made sure his mother got out. So how can you get your mother out, make sure your mother gets out, and still have these destructive policies, knowing that it's going to end a lot of lives unnecessarily? It exposed the most vulnerable to it. Excuse me. So, knowing that was the case, why would you, as president, be like, that's totally who I'd like to be my assistant health secretary? Reason being, I think that why Levin has that position is he's a diversity hire. He checks that that box of, okay, we got this trans person in the White House in this important role. We're inclusive, we're diverse, we're going to that oppression Olympics, and we're making sure we get all of our medals. So there's that. There's also the fact that he's pushing that ideology very, very hard. I've seen so many disturbing announcements and videos from Levin pushing that ideology, trying to make it more mainstream and dominant within our landscape as a country. So he shouldn't be in that position. If anything for the COVID stuff, Joe Biden, it was like some of the picks that he had was just to, I don't know, give the finger to Americans, to the right, whatever. Because on merit, there's no way that he should have this position. No way he should have this position. And neither should the actual secretary. But anyway, that was a tweet. So they were told that they had to take that down and their account was locked. So I wasn't aware of this discussion that they had, but Dan was like, we can't back down on this one. Are we all in agreement? And Seth said, we can still appeal it. And Kyle Mann was like, we won't delete the tweet. Screw that. And Seth said, I don't see how we could delete the tweet and have any respect for ourselves. It's a good hill to die on. And Kyle said, the time has come to be based. And then Seth said, I'll be tweeting it out in a minute. They'll want us to delete the tweet to get our account back. And Adam Ford said, burn it all to the ground. Sorry, how can we in good conscience delete it? And he said, very good question. So history, we know that obviously they didn't delete the tweet. It's still there. It's the tweet I just showed you guys. So they opted to just have the Babylon Bee. It was their main account where they posted that. So that account was locked. And Dylan was like, we're not taking it down. And they didn't. Even though they could no longer post tweets from that account. They said that if they took it down, it would be basically surrendering to this lie that Levin isn't really a man. They're upset because they said he's a man of the year and he identifies as a woman. And the joke is, that he is actually the man of the year or whatever. they've written better jokes. But they thought that was so offensive they had to lock their account. So to bow down because they're offended because they were like, this is a man, would be going in the wrong direction. So it was just locked. But Elon Musk was upset when he heard that their account was locked over such a thing. So we know Elon Musk bought Twitter. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but that was a big point, a big push, that it was monumental for Elon to take on this massive project, to invest so much money into it, to defend free speech. So I'm grateful for Elon Musk for doing that. But I'm so grateful to the Babylon Bee for standing up for objective reality, standing up for objective truth, and deciding to not delete that tweet, because it could have been so easy for someone else to do that. So easy for someone else just to delete it. And so once Elon got the keys to the kingdom, Babylon Bee could post again. But so many times, folks on the right, or just folks in general, but there'll be people on the right who will go ahead and essentially do we're going to delete the post. We're going to behave. We're going to do as we're told. And then it's a crazy thing with Twitter as well, where they're like, you have to delete it. Why if it somehow violates the guidelines, why don't you just delete it? That's what Twitter, TikTok will do. They'll just they'll remove a comment. They'll remove your video, and you can appeal it. I don't think you can really appeal your comments. But a video, you can go ahead and appeal it. But if it goes against their stuff, it's gone. You'll click on the video, it's gone. Even if someone like duets the video and it's side by side or whatever, it's gone. Their videos are gone. Anyone who like elevated this thing that they said goes against the guidelines. So why is it that Twitter makes the person delete it themselves? And I don't know how much thought they put into it, but it is pretty much like a humiliation ritual where you have to go ahead and delete it and show, fealty toward the process so you can have, your freedom back. So I'm glad that they did that they stood their ground. But how many of us are like, you know what? Well, I'm gonna just go ahead and be nice and curb my words and curb my thoughts and etc. Go along and get along. And it just causes the problem to persist. It just causes the problem to persist. I hate when I see people use the preferred gender pronouns. I do. Like we're just being respectful. I think you're blowing up a problem. I think you're blowing up a problem. I can understand the heart behind it. But you are elevating this idea that objective reality doesn't matter, that truth doesn't matter, that people's feelings trump honesty. You can disagree with me, but somebody's got to stand up and say, you know what, the truth is important. Somebody's got to stand up and do it. I was watching a back and forth video rebuttal between this apologist, Christian apologist. I don't know if I would assume he probably refers to himself that way. Inspiring philosophy. I don't know his real name, but he has a YouTube page, a TikTok page that are pretty big. They're on Twitter too. And they're going back and forth with Dan McClellan. And Dan is a critical biblical scholar He's a Mormon too. And I don't know how religious he actually is, but he'll say things that are like, bro, you're not a Christian all the time. And so people debate him with stuff all the time. He has like over 700,000 followers, and there's a lot of ex-Christians that follow him and Muslims that follow him and atheists that follow him, because I mean they like that he's, tearing down biblical things about the Bible, and I'm not saying that everything he puts out is inaccurate or whatever, but there's some things that are just so wrong, and he has such an arrogance to his ideology or whatever. So I got into Dan recently, and I've talked about it, I think, the past couple days, about political things, particularly the Trump bloodbath comments and the asylum seekers. So he's like echoing the left wing take on it. And it's so obvious if you listen to Trump's words that when he said there's going to be a bloodbath if he loses, he's talking about economic and the auto industry and the impacts of that. And when he was talking about certain people who aren't people, he's talking about criminals who illegally come over, who have a history, who are murdering people. And Dan just wouldn't accept that. At one point, I asked him, I'm like, well, can you just tell me if you believe that Laken Riley's killer is are you saying that they're an asylum seeker? Because that's who like Trump is talking about. And he wouldn't answer the question. He said it was like a category fallacy or something like that. And I'm like, why can't you just answer my question? Like your question is irrelevant. I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. He's like, no, it's the objective opinion. I'm like, how is that the objective opinion? He's like, you just want to hold on to this fallacy because you don't have a case. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't have a case? I've already presented the case. And so I did another video. So he was just a special guy, and his political opinions are very unhinged, but I guess it's easier to come at him for his political opinions because most people that's just kind of out there, easier for people to observe, and you don't need to know Greek or Hebrew to know that he's full of it. So anyway, he was going back and forth with Inspiring Philosophy over this true Scotsman fallacy, because I guess the allegation is that Christians that say Jehovah Witnesses or Mormons aren't really Christian because they're claiming that they're committing a no Scotsman fallacy. So Inspiring Philosophy said that's not true. So they've gone back and forth for a few videos, not even talking about what Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses or anybody believes, just arguing about the semantics of the no Scotsman fallacy. And so Inspiring Philosophy used an example of if you're like, vegans don't eat steak or something, a statement like that. And Dan comes back with, well, what about vegans who do eat steak because they don't want to, they're embarrassed about living their vegan lifestyle in front of people. And I was blown away when I heard that. I'm like, do words not have meaning anymore? And Inspiring Philosophy just was like, I'm not going to accept this premise that you can just identify out of things. Words have meaning. You can't just eat steak and claim that you're a vegan. You can say that, but you're clearly still not one. And it was so bizarre when he said that, but I wasn't completely surprised because he's someone who believes that gender identity is a thing, and you can be a man and say that you're a woman. And so I guess words have no inherent meaning, and you can negotiate what the words mean, etc. But there's just no ground to stand on if we can't have agreements about what words mean. How can we really communicate? And if we can't communicate, how can we really have logic and reason? And it's so strange. I keep going back to that ex KGB guy just talking about when you demoralize a society then the truth doesn't matter. You could show something to someone and it'd be right in their face, and you can't convince them of truthfulness because society is just so far gone. And that was an interview like, I don't know, in the 80s or something like that, maybe before. So if he said it was basically too late to save America then, I guess maybe it's far too late now, but we got to try at some point. We got to try at some point. But much of that is going to depend on us standing our ground. The trans men coming into the bathrooms at spas and all that stuff and on the sports team, much of that is women capitulating to these dudes. And if women would, now some women are bullied and all kinds of different stuff as well. So I mean, I understand some. I sympathize with some women who've been in really bad situations where if they say something, they could lose their job, or bullying far more than that. I've heard some stories where it's like I can understand why they feel like they can't speak out. But there does need to be a collective, you know what? Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And I'm glad that Babylon Bee was like, enough is enough. Now, there are some stakes that people have that are higher than being blocked on Twitter, but them posting stuff to Twitter that does affect their revenue and other stuff like that. So I'm not saying they didn't lose something when they decided to make that, draw that line in the sand there. But there are definitely other people who face other kind of stakes, like folks who can't afford to lose their real estate license or other stuff like that. I get it. But at some point, we all have to stand up and say enough is enough. We're going to stand up for the truth. And it's a hill worth dying on. It's a hill worth dying on. So I greatly respect what they did. It was worth talking about and pointing out. And I'm glad that, they had that reminder and that he shared those internal comments about it. And it was nice to know they're all on one accord, but this really how can we they're like we don't see how we can respect ourselves, we don't die on this hill, and how can we in good conscience delete it. A lot of people know that they're betraying their conscience when they decide to take the knee to a lot of this woke stuff. Stand firm, please stand firm. We need folks to stand firm. Anyway, another crazy thing that's going on in this world. You guys know, as I just mentioned, that folks have been coming against Trump, and there's been all kinds of crazy headlines because he was at a rally with auto workers and stuff and mentioned that there would be a bloodbath if he loses the election, talking about the financial repercussions of the auto industry, etc. Very clear from the context. I've played it for you guys earlier this week. I'm sure you've probably seen it by now, but if you haven't, please take my word for it, but you don't have to. You can go look it up yourself. But it was clearly about the auto industry. Bloodbath, people, even if you weren't, there is an economic meaning for bloodbath, like economic bloodbath. But even if you aren't thinking specifically or knew that it was about economics, we can still understand metaphorically a bloodbath. Even in the context of like the auto industry, we can still understand the metaphor with that and know that it's not about going and hacking up people to bits or stabbing folks to death or getting actually physically violent with people. So I've seen a lot of people share different screenshots of definitions. Well, In Wokeness, I guess, had some screenshots that they shared of Google and their definitions and what they said before this became a big story and what it says now. So, according to them, on March 17th, the definition was a ruthless slaughter of a great number of people, massacre informal period of disastrous loss or reversal. A few mutual funds perform well in the general bloodbath of their stock market. Okay. Now, today's Thursday, the 21st. And I did check this, at least today's. Uh, bloodbath is now an event or situation which many people are killed in a violent manner. He allowed the protest to go on, go ahead, despite warnings it would spark a bloodbath. That seems so specific since they're like, connecting this with Jan 6. So, that's interesting, right? Now, I'm not surprised. It's sad, right? It's sad, but I'm not surprised. The other day, um, I mentioned that there was a right wing group that was suing. I don't know if they're suing Google, but they just kind of sounded the alarm that Google was altering their search results and other things to benefit Democrats. And Google's response to that was basically, it's good for us to play both sides. So I guess kind of why would we do that? Because you're corrupted in your ideology, and it's obvious. So I think it's funny that this happened like right after that I saw that report and talked about it. There was also an article I haven't read, but I saved it. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow after I read it. But Barry Weiss, or Weiss, the Free Press, her paper interviewed someone who worked within Google to talk about the AI program that was obviously very woke. And they just kind of spilled the beans like Google is a terribly left wing place. And I guess people were like even donating to Hillary to different Democrat campaigns because they figured that would advance their careers and all sorts of different stuff. So I'll have to actually look at that because I just saw snippets about the article. But I'm not surprised at Google about this. For a long time, if you Googled the definition of a fetus, let me Google it really quick. It would say right on there that it was a unborn baby of what would pull up. And now it's an offspring or human or other mammal in the stages of prenatal development that follow an embryo stage, and humans taken at the beginning of 8 weeks after conception. Which that's not a wrong definition, but that's not the same as an unborn human baby. Because I would love like it's a fetus, it's not a baby, and I would just whoop, here's the definition: unborn human baby. I mean, a fetus doesn't have to be human, but because there are different fetuses for different species, whatever. But if it's a human fetus, it's a human baby, and people would deny that because they, I don't know, want to just disassociate themselves from that. So eventually that got changed. I was surprised for how long that particular definition was there, but I still have my screenshots. But they do change the search results as it, benefits them. And it's not just Google, though I think it's pretty dangerous that Google does it because so many people depend on Google for their search engine to get these particular results, and they push different narratives upward. But at some point in time, when people were really talking about ectopic pregnancies, I guess maybe 2020, 2021 or something like that, or maybe it was 2022. There's a lot of discussions about ectopic pregnancies because they wanted to include ectopic pregnancies in the discussion of abortion because they want to just make it seem like women are just going to have no sort of help if we don't ban abortion. Because what if you find yourself in a situation where you have an ectopic pregnancy? So on Planned Parenthood's website, it would plainly say that an ectopic pregnancy is not abortion. So they eventually changed their language too. So people change up their language when it's convenient for them. Like sometimes, oh, honesty is perfectly fine, and then when they see that it's not politically expedient to just be blatantly honest, they have to change up their words so they can continue to misinform the population. It's crazy to me that if you're on YouTube, I don't know if it'll pop up now. I don't know how much because I haven't talked a lot about abortion, but if you do a video that is about abortion, it'll take you to a website. There's a link, it'll take you to a website, and it'll describe abortion as just the ending of a pregnancy or termination of a pregnancy. It won't say resulting in the death of an embryo or fetus. And that's why you have a lot of brain dead people who keep insisting that a C section is an abortion. Or they'll say things like, I'm pro choice all the way up to 9 months. And they'll say something provocative like that. They'll say, well, in the third trimester, you would just deliver the baby, and they would still consider that to be an abortion or induce the labor. Like, nope, that's not what you. If you went to Dr. Heard's clinic in Colorado and said you would like a late term abortion, they are not planning on inducing that labor. They're going to induce fetal demise on day one of that 4-day procedure. So it's incredible what people will tell themselves. It's incredible what people will tell themselves. So again, I'm not surprised about Google. Some people are like, Elon, you need to get a new search engine too with X. Actually, Elon Musk did retweet it, so I get at least people are aware of it, but what I don't understand about the bloodbath thing, I mean, I do understand why they took Trump out of context because we watched Joe Biden's video together that they released where they take the bloodbath comment and they tie that to Charlottesville and the neo Nazis, and they're very fine people, and they don't include the denouncement of the neo Nazis, which he explicitly did. So Joe Biden, they don't care about honesty; they just want to gin up outrage. So, I understand why they're lying, and the media, wants to hype up Biden and the lie and cover for them. So I get that. I get that. But if they wanted to be honest and have debates about Trump's policies, they could have debated Trump and his tariffs that he was proposing in that same speech and gone from there. It talked about substantive things, but they don't have substantive things that they could talk about because they know they're on the losing issue of most of those things. So that all they could do is try to scare Americans out of voting for Donald Trump. That's all that they could do. And it's pretty disgusting. And it doesn't unify the country. Anyway, moving on. Last thing I want to mention before I let you guys go today is that CNN reached out to me about an interview, not like a full interview on me, but they want to they're doing a story about I guess Jesus and whether he was black or how people feel about his ethnicity and other stuff like that and his color. And they said they were doing it for Easter, and I'm like thinking like I don't know what that has to do with Easter. um but they reached out to me today, and some people I let be known on YouTube, and some of y'all were like, sounds like a good opportunity. Some of you like say don't do it. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it because they do want a different perspective, and I did write an article about it. So if I don't say anything, they could still quote the article. It's out there. I made it. I can't be like, don't do it. So there's always a possibility they could take me out of context, but if I don't offer something, they could still take the article out of context. But they said that they'll link it, and so that could bring more people to my website. So one way or another, that would probably be a good opportunity for me. So do I have another cold? No, I don't. A cold. I know I know it kind of sounds like it does. No, I don't have another cold, but thank you for your concern. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it, but I wanted to go ahead and read the article that they saw, and I wrote it 2 years ago, and I'm probably about 3 years ago now. But the article is the color of Jesus doesn't matter. There's an obsession today with the race of Jesus Christ. People are critical of old portraits with rosy cheeks and telltales of forbidden statues hidden from the world with wide noses and dark skin. Leftists will call Jesus brown skin, normally followed by an inaccurate rant promoting socialism to trigger white conservative Christians. Many cite scripture in Revelation describing Jesus' feet like brass/bronze, even though it's in reference to the metal and not the color. John was painting a picture of a precious and powerful God, yet we've given ourselves permission to minimize our Savior into something as mundane as pigmentation. God is eternal. Should it matter to us what he looked like for 33 years? CNN's Don Lemon said on The View, kids must be taught Jesus was black or brown, and this could help end racism. But why would it? Jesus was a Jew. That didn't stop the horrors of the Holocaust or the spread of anti Semitism around the world. It didn't stop the Pharisees from challenging Jesus and wanting him to be crucified. Being a follower of Christ doesn't stop persecution. As a matter of fact, Jesus guarantees it. Why would a shade of color grant you something Jesus never promised? Do men like Lemon care about Jesus? In this same interview, he criticized Christianity. He claims to respect people's right to believe in their God, but if you believe in something that hurts another person or restricts their freedom, Lemon believes that is wrong. He said God is not about hindering people or even judging people. This is absolutely untrue. If Jesus returned today and walked the streets of Manhattan, darker than Mr. Lemon, I imagine many might share a shallow sense of excitement. But if Jesus starts to preach about denying yourself, giving up sexual immorality, and sinning no more, and how the obsession of your riches and possessions will make it harder to enter into heaven, I imagine the excitement would die off. I don't think men like Mr. Lemon would appreciate when Jesus teaches what marriage is supposed to be, and neither would divorced Christians who harden their hearts. By the time he offends abortion providers by saying God hates hands that shed innocent blood and rebukes Americans for our covetousness, he'd be called a bigoted coon and thoroughly canceled. We only care about the color of Jesus' skin because we don't understand the content of his character. Jesus came with a very specific mission. He preached the kingdom of heaven and came to be the lamb that was slain so we could receive salvation. He operated in signs, wonders, and miracles to raise up disciples to carry on the work, telling them they do even greater works. Yes, we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. I believe every part of my design is meaningful, including my skin. We live and operate in the world among people who worship the flesh. It plays a part in my life, though relatively smaller than it did for my parents, grandparents, and so on. But Christians are meant to crucify their flesh. We are meant to look beyond the natural. When my father was a young man, he used to share a sentiment that Black activists have today. It's important to see color, and if you deny it, you're ignoring their identity and racial struggles. This was even pushed recently to children on Cartoon Network. But over time, God dealt with him and putting away his carnal thoughts and to see no color. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ. That doesn't mean we ignore injustice, but the heart of injustice is sin, and it crosses all borders, tribes, and ethnic groups. Racism is evil. Why should believers create a divide while we fight against it? We shouldn't separate ourselves by whites and non whites like the Princeton Theological Seminary recently did. A house divided against itself will not stand. God is no respecter of persons. You can't take your privilege to the throne and your struggles and your struggles don't earn you extra brownie points. The Hebrews who couldn't get beyond their slave mentality were left in the wilderness. God didn't allow Jonah to go about his business when he refused to preach to Nineveh. He sabotaged his servant until Jonah preached deliverance to people he despised. God is about God's business. We wear our racial divides around our necks like medals, but our obsession with the flesh is the obstacle we're meant to overcome. After all, what does it matter how we were born when Jesus wants us to be born again? We are to be new creatures, children of the living God. Was the Passion of Christ a perfect representation of what Christ looked like? Maybe, perhaps not. Does he look more like Jim Caviezel than Idris Elba? Probably. Should it change your perception of Jesus or your Christian walk either way? Absolutely not. It may make for an interesting theological discussion from time to time, but in the span of eternity, a blip of melon is meaningless. So that's the article. That's the article. So, he said, he could have just like quoted it, but he thought like, hey, why not reach out and talk about and get that perspective. So, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and uh, you know, respond and answer the questions. I will. I do appreciate everyone's concern. I do. I think I will make sure that if it's not like he writes down questions and answer it via, you know, I don't know, text or something, then I will make sure I record the conversation. If that's well, I won't have a conversation, I guess, if I can't record it. So even if I'm taken out of context or something, I will have some kind of evidence of what I said. So I appreciate everyone's concern. And someone pointed out, I don't remember who said it, but on the post, maybe it was Shantae. Maybe was that you who said it's a good opportunity to spread the gospel? I don't know if it was you or somebody else. And I don't know how they'll relay the message, but again, if they're going to link back to my website, that is good exposure. So, I'm going to keep doing me, being me, and just speak the truth, and hopefully it'll continue to resonate with people. And we'll see. But it's interesting. I guess I'm glad I'm popping up in the Google searches. Especially, I mean, I don't know how they exactly found that article, but I guess I'm glad, that people can find their way to that, because Don Lemon, his comments were crazy to me. Because if you really think that Jesus being black or brown is going to end racism or solve all kinds of problems, like you probably missed a lot that's in the book. I mean, I already talked about and rest about it when I read the article, so I don't have to keep hammering it or whatever. But it's just a silly worldview to think that it matters that much to people. Race, like, it matters. Like, Democrats will really stress the importance of diversity and race and how important it is, but the reality is it's far less important to them than what they pretend. It's far less important, because if I say something they don't like, then they are not like, don't attack her, she's a black woman. They don't do that. So if anything, they might attack harder because I'm a black woman with the wrong sort of opinion. So I'm not particularly special in a club because I'm a black woman. Like, you have to have the right sort of ideology to be considered legitimate. So is it really about the color, or is it about what people think? Because if I don't have the right sort of mentality, I'm not really in your club. Right? So it's not really about being black. And then there's people on the right who do pretend like race matters far less than they care to acknowledge. I promise you, when there's a rally, they think about who's sitting behind the president or different candidates, and they stage people they think about, not everybody does. Sometimes it goes past people's heads, but there are people who are like, okay, we want to make sure that we have diversity here, and they appeal to this group. I mean, Trump had the Black Voices for Trump office and the buses that were going around. I didn't like the title, the name of it though, but that's what they named their office, is Black Voices for Trump. So everybody cares about it a bit, but I think people who pretend like it means so much are just talking crap. What should be the most important factor is who we are as individuals, our belief systems, and go on from there. So the point of my article again was, what matters is what Jesus taught, and him being a different shade isn't going to change what was taught. I think as people, we do sort of crave to have some kind of familiar bond with folks, something that we can relate to. And a lot of times, if people can do that visually with race, we will. But you don't need to do it with race to relate to someone like Peter Parker, Spider-Man. He was relatable. People loved Peter Parker. I mean, they thought Spider-Man was cool. He's strong. He has a spider sense. He can fight, etc. But Peter Parker, the character, he, isn't a billionaire like a Batman or a Tony Stark. He doesn't live in a nice place. He has girl trouble. Had to finish when he was in school. He had to, have homework and try to pay bills. He's struggling to pay bills and like have the web cartridge and stuff. It's a lot, but people could relate because he's this average guy. He's not some African prince. He's not an alien. He's an average guy, a pretty nerdy guy who happened to get bit by a radioactive spider and all of a sudden had these powers, and he still has these struggles, and he's doing right for right's sake because he has, with great power comes great responsibility. In other words, you have the capability of doing something good for other people, so you should. So, his Uncle Ben preached, do what you ought to do, which Peter, kind of ignored, which ultimately led to Uncle Ben dying. And so he always remembers that and internalizes that, and is like, I have to do what is right. So he's very relatable, and despite of people with all races, even though, he's a white guy. But we do that all the time. Relating to people who don't necessarily look like us, but we find other things to connect to, So, but sometimes people do connect with, oh, that person looks like me. Oh, I assume that we have similar backgrounds or cultural things because I can see we're of the same ethnicity or something. And we'll make, those assumptions. So I can understand people wanting to do that to Jesus because it makes him feel more familiar to them. And what's bothersome about people bringing that up, though, is that many times people bring up the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus as if it's just white people who do that. But people from all around the world have restructured Jesus into their kind of nationality to make him familiar to them. And some of that is maybe based off ignorance of they don't know what that other person would they wouldn't have known what he looked like or couldn't imagine what he looked like. But so some of it is people just kind of relating it to their culture to be familiar with it. I've talked about how in Bronner's there's a Christmas store that's open all year around, and they have a museum in there of different nativity scenes from all around the world, and it's really neat to see people's different interpretation of it. But you can see the different cultures come through, and it's not just there were nativity scenes with the Black Jesus. Yes, there were nativity scenes with a white Jesus, and there were nativity scenes with everybody being animals or different kind of weird sculptures and statues. Like the Italian one was very strange, kind of modern and creepy. Maybe it wasn't modern, but it was strange to me. But one of my favorite ones was Mary was like kind of laying down, and Joseph was holding Jesus. That was one of my favorite ones. But it was really cool to see. But it just reminded me of the fact that this isn't something that like white colonizers just dominated, like of just pushing their view of Jesus or something. Many people do this, but again, at the end of the day, what matters and why people worship God and become Christians and know Christ as their savior is because he was willing to be that lamb that was slain. That's the most important thing. Not his melon, that he was the lamb that was slain, that he's the Lord of Lords, King of Kings, but he was that lamb that was slain. He was willing to lay down his life for our salvation. That's the important thing. That's the important thing. And not just for me who's black, not just for you who might be white or Hispanic, for all of us, for the world. For the world. Anyway, that is the show for today. Please go blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc., like the article I just read to you guys. Check out different merchandise that I have on the site, shirts and mugs and so on there. Make sure you guys are dropping your emails on the email list, etc., if you haven't. And check out my different books, like My Not So Magical Negro. But she got superpowers. I mentioned in my review that, I guess maybe I mentioned it yesterday, that Nerdrotic was like, why didn't they just, because of the in the American Society of Magical Negroes, the powers kind of started with like slaves, and he's like, why did they just use their powers to escape? You can teleport. And so I'm like, my magical Negro, she can teleport, and she was smart enough to get away. So anyway, check out my book. You guys can if you go to the merchandise page of blacktnews.com, you'll be able to find it easy enough. But really, you can just go to Amazon and find it real quick and buy it. So and if you don't want the paperback, you guys can get it on Amazon too. And you could buy an ebook, or if you have a Kindle Unlimited, you can read it that way too. Anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you guys for being in the chat. You guys are, at least the YouTube portion was lively today. So I thank you. That actually helps people also find the stream. I see a couple comments from Facebook, but you guys on YouTube are rocking it out.